If you're looking to break into tech sales or upgrade to a better role, then listen to this hiring manager with 23 years of experience and former CRO break down exactly what hiring managers like him look for, interview questions that you're going to be asked, and even share tips to get promoted. And as a bonus, we also linked a free course to maximize your stock options once you land the role.
Kevin Gaither, KG, what a treat to have you on the podcast. You've got 28 years of experience as a hiring manager. Your last role was a chief sales officer. You know what it takes to land a job, an SDR role, an AE role, even for the most competitive opportunities, because you've been on the other side.
Yep.
You know what the other side's looking for. So let's get right into it. Hold on. We're going to talk about 6 must-have characteristics that you need to show hiring managers to land a great role that could change your career.
Yep.
Before we get into the question or the characteristics and questions that a hiring manager might ask to assess for these characteristics, who is this for? Is this for SDRs, AEs? What types of roles is this going to be useful for?
Yeah, great question. I get that quite a bit, and I use these questions when I'm hiring for any sort of sales role. And I hate it when founders or CEOs, when I say sales and they just think hunting AEs. No, I'm talking about account managers, SDRs, BDRs, inbound BDRs, whatever you want to call it, account managers, anybody who has a quota carrying role, whether that quota is expressed in revenues or book size or in meetings held, meetings set, whatever that might be, any sort of sales role. These I've learned by trial and error, Chris, making mistakes, that these 6 characteristics are universal. I look for these things as a foundation of any sort of sales role.
So sellers, listen up. You're going to learn exactly what you need to demonstrate in interviews to land that career-changing opportunity. And hey, if you're a leader at a company, a sales leader, you're in talent, you're a recruiter or hiring manager, you might learn something too on what you need to be looking for. So Kevin, let's do this thing. Let's walk through each of the 6 characteristics.
Yeah.
And then we'll give some example questions per characteristic. So let's start with characteristic number 1.
Yeah, characteristic number 1. Again, these are, for me, they're non-negotiable. Need for achievement. What does that mean? I've written out the definition. And by the way, if you're a hiring manager and you have characteristics and you haven't written out what the definition actually means, you're already doing it wrong. So the definition that I've written down is a burning need to achieve, ambitious, disciplined, focused on advancement, willing to do things that others will not do in favor of their goals. Need for achievement. I'm looking for people that have a high need for achievement.
That is powerful. And that also shows me, like, I want to be that person, by the way. Like, it just resonates. It's amazing how sales is a vehicle to self-development. And if someone hears that and they're like, I'm not demonstrating that, maybe you take a look in the mirror and you make some adjustments. It's not too late to embody it and develop some proof in your life where you start to internalize and become that. But hey, what are the questions? They're like maybe 1 or 2 example questions.
Sure.
A hiring manager might ask that is assessing for the need for achievement.
Yeah. And not all of your listeners are going to like this, but that doesn't matter. And again, not everybody has a high need for achievement. Okay. So the first question I really love to ask is, what kinds of sacrifices have you had to make in your personal life in order to be successful in your work life? What kinds of sacrifices have you had to make in your personal life in order to be successful in your work life? And what I'm looking for is substantial past sacrifices for success at work. A lot of people don't like that, Chris, though. A lot of people are like, I'll never sacrifice in my personal life in favor of work success. Great. Good for you. That's not the kind of salesperson that does really well.
Yes.
The kind of salesperson, and you know, Chris, you're a high achiever. Okay. You know, you've been at very successful software as a service companies in the past. Yes. And there's times that when the client calls, you've got to blow something off. You've got to prepare. I've had people that have missed weddings. I've had people that have missed important, family events, birthday parties, because the client called. I even had a salesperson one time. She told me that she was in a recital for her little daughter. And just as the curtain was about to go up, a client called with an emergency problem, and she had to step out and take that call. And I said, how'd you feel about that? And she said, well, I hated it. I really didn't like to, but I had to. I had to do it. And it's those subtle choices that most people aren't willing to make. And so that's why that's one of my favorite questions, Chris. My next favorite question on that one, did you want to expand on that further or keep going?
Well, another thing, like, this is more, I don't know if it's meta, but I gave up drinking entirely. And right. So I gave up a portion of myself related to partying and things that, like, some people will continue to drink and party and they can manage it. But I've made some sacrifices, and you could call that personal, that allow me to show up consistently
at work.
And so now, okay, I'll cut off this tangent a sec, because some might say, oh, drinking with customers is like, it's a good thing. But I'm able to do a mocktail and still facilitate that kind of camaraderie with customers. But that came up for me because I didn't prepare for the question. But so I love the examples you gave. And I don't know if, like, how that would come across to you. And you also could say, like, Chris, I don't know if that really resonates or not. Because that's cool too. Because sometimes in these conversations, like, even I do a cold call role play and the other person's like, you know what, that was a little wordy. And so it's good to these conversations, we get to give feedback, but, like, would that, like, certain things we've given up in our personal life be relevant as well?
No, that's exactly, I am looking for that type of stuff. You did mention it's sort of meta, it's like big picture, but the important point here is we're looking for patterns. And so I would say, Chris, that's fantastic. How did you feel about having to give that up? Now, remember, the key thing about the recital story was that the mom, she hated having to do that. She hated having to take that call and missing her daughter's recital, but she had to. Her need for achievement took over and said, you have to. Okay. Now, so I would say, Chris, good for you. That's fantastic. How did you feel about having to give up drinking? And maybe you'd say something like, well, there was just a bunch of other things that were going on as well. And it wasn't just about work in and of itself. I'd say, great. Now, and here's key. Tell me about another time. And so for the AEs, the salespeople listening on this call, you may have one story, but a good interviewer, a skilled interviewer, is going to peel back the onion, just like a good discovery call. You're going to peel back the onion a little bit further. And I'm going to say, Chris, well, great. Tell me about another time when you made a sacrifice in your personal life in favor of work success. And then you'll tell me about a time. I guarantee you, Chris, you got 10 of them in your head right now. You'll tell me about a time where it was this very specific situation. Maybe you blew off a date with a partner. Okay. You're like, sorry, I know we have our meeting, our date in an hour, but I just have to finish this client proposal or this RFP or something like that. And it may have even cost you a relationship, and you didn't like that, but you had to do it because your need for achievement pushed you to blow that personal thing off in favor of this customer thing. I actually saw you just gulp, by the way. You're thinking of something in your mind right now, aren't you?
Definitely. No, there's a lot of examples, of times where I did something that it sucked, but it was because I wanted to achieve. And even with the mom stepping out of the recital, that actually really sucks because family's important to me, but also you could connect that to, like, it's funny. This is almost not even the most relevant point, but if I were her, connecting to her ability to provide for her family and her daughter to have good experiences. And there's a way to maybe connect it to that as well. But thank you for giving us concrete examples yourself. And did I interrupt though? Like when I brought up the idea of giving up drinking, did you have another question you were about to bounce to?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would follow that up, and I'm clustering, I'll cluster 3 to 5 questions to see if I can see patterns associated with that characteristic of need for achievement. For example, tell me about a few times where you exceeded expectations or went beyond the call of duty, beyond what was expected, of you. And the key piece for your audience to understand, whether it's an AE or a hiring manager, is Tell me about a few times. I'm looking for a couple of times, 2, 3 times where you went above and beyond the Call of Duty. The level was X and you went X plus. Tell me about a time when you did that.
Yeah.
Again, high performers aren't the minimum performers. This is like minimum pieces of flair, in Office Space. The high performers, they're not meeting minimums. They're always going above and beyond. Why? They just feel it, like they have to. They have a high need for achievement. Did you want to go on to the next one?
Yeah, let's keep it rolling because we got so much to cover. So let's go to the next quality or characteristic. What is it?
Yeah, competitiveness. Now, competitiveness oftentimes, especially us dudes, make the mistake of confusing competitiveness with athletes. And I completely object to the concept of hiring sales athletes. I think that's, I've learned that it's myopic and unbelievably biased. My definition of competitiveness is hardwired to be number one, always eyeing their peers, always comparing their performance to others. They're out to win and they're born to win. If you think a good question, by the way, is which do you like better? Do you hate to lose or love to win? If you think that's a good interview question, I'm going to reach through the microphone and smack you upside the head. Yeah. Here's 2 better questions that you should be asking besides that. When was the last time you were competitive? And then tell me about another time. So you're looking for a couple of times. When was the last time you were competitive? Truly competitive. And here's a key, Chris. Truly competitive people are always competitive throughout their entire lives, work or personal. Notice the structure of the question. When was the last time you were competitive? And when I get excited is when I hear the candidate on the other end of the line go, well, do you mean work or personal? Because they can come up with a really competitive person doesn't distinguish between being competitive at work and being competitive in their personal life. And where I get worried is if I hear a salesperson say, well, in order to be successful in sales, you have to be competitive. That wasn't what I asked you. I asked you to tell me about the last time you were competitive. And really, truly competitive people will have a story from today, yesterday, over the weekend, last week. They'll have boatloads of story, personal as well as competitive, or personal as opposed to work. And again, look for 2 questions, 2 times there. And then tell me about the most competitive situation you faced at work. And the follow-on questions that go along with that is, how unusual was that for you? And you really are looking for somebody who can tell a story about competition with coworkers or with a competitor over a customer and describes it as a common occurrence, and they're comfortable with it, and those are 2 key questions. Again, in my I've got 77 interview questions, of course, that you and I have discussed before to download, and there's many more questions in each of these characteristics. And again, there's 6 characteristics, Chris: need for achievement, competitiveness, optimism, continual learning, coachability, and organizational skills. And we've just covered the first 2, right?
Yeah, so we got to keep it rolling. Those 77 questions are linked in the description of this video for the audience to download and really get the answers to the test so they know the types of stories they're going to need to be preparing, the types of proof point they need to demonstrate. So let's get to number 3. Did you say number 3 was optimism? Did I hear you correctly?
You did, absolutely. Optimism. To the lay person, I would just simply say, like, look, thick skin. You got to have thick skin to be very successful in sales. Okay. It provides the body armor to withstand the inevitable rejection of selling, credits them with success, but doesn't take defeat, personally there. And those types of people, they laugh in the face of rejection. On the flip side, the other people, where they just have to get away from the phones and go take a smoke break every time they get their behinds, handed, to them. And you're just not going to be successful in sales. A good sample question, and we can move on to the next characteristic, but a good sample question for optimism, of which there's, I think, six of them in my download. Tell me, think back to the last time you lost a deal. What did you do to recover from that? And what you're looking for is somebody that's going to quickly put the situation into perspective and bounce back by working on another sale. What you don't want, and I've heard in the past, of course, is couldn't handle it, had to take the day off, had to take the rest of the day off, just couldn't, got rejected, lost a sale. It was too much, had to go home, had to take a mental health day. Okay, well, you're going to get your butt handed to you in sales if you can't handle that kind of rejection. You know, our conversion rates aren't 100%.
Kevin's been sharing some golden insights to help you interview well and land your next gig. But the reality is that knowledge alone is not enough. You need to translate what you learn into action. And if you're looking for a program that helps you do that, that actually helps you implement what you learn, helps you get results, and even opens up access to a network across the industry to help you get an insider edge, then consider working with Tech Sales Accelerator. Our programs are thorough, comprehensive, and personalized, and we've been helping people like Max launch his career at Rubrik, Alex break into Snowflake, and Tony upgrade to an AE role at a late-stage startup that's growing fast and has a ton of inbound leads. Our members are winning, and we want to help you win too. So feel welcome to book time at my Calendly link, and I look forward to seeing you in a conversation to map out a plan to hit your unique tech sales goals.
It also applies to being rejected on a cold call. Our ability to bounce back and be buoyant is important. I use the term buoyant intentionally. I had Dan Pink, the author of To Sell is Human, on the podcast, and in his book, To Sell is Human, he talks about buoyancy as one of those characteristics, exactly what you're saying, ability to bounce back. So you and Dan Pink took a page out of each other's book. And so, hey, let's get to number 4, man. This is great. What's the 4th characteristic?
Yeah. And by the way, I love your perspective on this. Is we're using this as a cheat code for AEs. And don't get me wrong, I love it because, you know, some people say to me, Chris, why would you give away all your questions? Why? And I'd say because 1% of those salespeople will actually take the time to look. 1% of the 1% will actually do the preparation.
Yes.
And I would want to hire those people that would do that anyway. So anyway,
I have to say, you gave me an opportunity to shamelessly plug Tech Sales Accelerator, because that's the whole point of our programs, is to provide the accountability to put in the preparation when you have the knowledge, to get the reinforcement and feedback. So by the time they get to the leader like you, they're sharpened and they're ready to go, and they translate that knowledge into actual results. So I had to throw that in there. And hey, that's linked in the description too. But guys, you got to get these 77 questions. You got to get your resource to help AEs understand their equity package. And, you know, let's give that a quick plug before we go to the next characteristic. Sure. You know, just your take on, like, why did you put that together for AEs to understand their equity package, and what can they expect?
Yeah, you know, there's just so many jobs, you know, sales jobs at startups where part of the compensation package is stock options. It's part of your equity package, you know, and HR puts a value on it, and they've got a strike price and all that kind of stuff there. But the reality is that founders and HR people, especially, they never sit you down and explain it to you. I've been at 8 startups, 3 of which have had successful liquidity events. In other words, put money in my pocket. Okay. And it still took me a long time to understand what the stock options actually were, how they worked, how I could take advantage of them. And I could have made a lot more money had I mean, I did fine. I'm not complaining, but had I known what I know now, 20 years ago, when I got my first set of stock options, I could have made a lot more money and taken advantage of, you know, tax codes and things like that. It's not super complex. And so that's why I put together this, you know, email course, dumbed down, like, for 3-year-olds, frankly. So it'd be really easy for these AEs and sales leaders. When you got stock options at that startup that you're working at, you can learn very quickly how to take advantage of that and understand what you've actually even been given, because no one's going to teach you.
So imagine you get this resource, So you're ready for that like unicorn startup you're applying for to know how to get the most out of your equity. But before that, let's not put the cart before the horse. Let's get back to characteristics.
Let's got
So
it.
what was our next one?
Let's do it. Yeah, continual learning. And
Yeah.
continual learning is very closely tied to the fifth one, which we'll get to obviously in a second. Continual learning is one of my absolute favorites, because I need people that are going to work with me that are constantly looking for ways to continually improve. So they're motivated to learn. They demonstrate ability to acquire understanding and absorb new information, exhibits continual learning through reading, seminars, networks, professional organization. These are the kinds of people they're just like, I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to read books on sales. I'm going to read, newsletters on my industry. I'm going to subscribe to, YouTube channels for my industry or sales. They are just, they could be the top 1%. They could be a high performer already in their profession, sales, but they know they could still be better. They know they can still be better. And high performers are like that. I mean, everybody knows that Tiger Woods used to spend $1 million a year on his coach. Tiger Woods used to spend $1 million a year on a trainer and a coach. Are you kidding me? So these are the kinds of people that I would want to hire. But and I'll give you a sample question here. So besides college and high school, what seminars and formal education have you participated in, and when? So basically, like, what have you done in the last, whatever X years since high school or college to like continually educate yourself? Okay. In the past year, what specifically have you done in order to keep your selling skills sharp? And if it's okay with you, Chris, I think it's very tightly correlated to the next one, which is coachability. One of my biggest problem that I see is people that are continual learners. They'll soak up information and it goes in the ears and into the head, but then they don't actually do anything with it. Okay. So continual learning in and of itself, that's great. I want to hire people that score high there as well. But those that are also then coachable to put those things into practice are critically important, which is the fifth characteristic, coachability. Takes manager feedback and immediately implements, open to and desires constructive criticism, builds feedback mechanisms to minimize these blind spots, and a strong desire to improve through feedback through others. And two simple questions that I like to ask here. There's 3 total that I've got written out. Tell me about the last time your manager approached you after you got off a call and gave you constructive criticism. What was the situation, and how did that make you feel? The people that I want to work with are like, always could be better. It was fantastic. I love it. I always want that kind of feedback, as opposed to, I wish my boss would just shut the hell up and get out of my face. And then the next one is, during your last performance review, what are some of the things your manager said you needed to work on? And then the follow-on question, after they give you the answer, what have you done to improve in those areas? And so, somebody told you kind of sucked at this, and this. What did you do about it? The high performers are like, they're finding books, they're finding mentors. You want to, one of the best salespeople I ever hired, she told me she wanted to get into advertising sales. She shelled out $2,000 of her own money to take a course on advertising sales, because I used to be in media sales. She shelled out $2,000. She had a deficiency. She wanted to learn. She spent $2,000 to improve. And she was one of the best salespeople I'd ever hired. Her name is Sabrina. And it's like, I think, if you're listening to this, you're like, what in the world have you done for yourself to get better? Are you relying on your sales manager and the training department at your company to give you all the training? Or are you investing in yourself to get better? Because even if you made President's Club last year, you can still be better. Even if you were number 1 on your sales team, you can still be better. Because I know your conversion rates are not 100%. And then the final characteristic, and this one is not necessarily a skill that is that you can't learn, but I'd rather hire a salesperson that has high organizational skills, already, I'd rather not have to teach somebody organizational skills. This sounds obvious. The way I've defined it, Chris, is plans, organized, schedules in an efficient, productive manner, focuses on key priorities, effectively juggles multiple leads and opportunities, pays appropriate attention to detail, manages personal time well. Look, Chris, as an enterprise seller, you've got to juggle buying committees, RFPs you got to put out, multiple proposals, multiple opportunities, and you got to make some time for making new calls and breaking into these accounts and blueprinting your accounts and calling other people within the account so that you're building out, lots of people on the sphere of influence. I just don't have time to make more calls. I don't have time to do RFPs. I missed a client call because I can't keep my stuff together. I'm trying not to swear, Chris. And it's like, I don't have any tolerance for that. Okay. So yes, could I spend time sitting with you and teaching you organizational skills? I could, but the salesperson, if I had to choose between a salesperson that has all 6 of the characteristics, including organizational skills, or just 5 of the characteristics and doesn't have organizational skills, I'm choosing the salesperson that already has organizational skills. They time block in their personal lives. They use their calendar really efficiently in their personal life as well as their work life. I would rather, hire those types of people. So in summary, the 6 characteristics: need for achievement, competitiveness, optimism, continual learning, organizational skills, and coachability. For any sales hire, those are the 6 non-negotiables from there. What do you think?
It's time for the audience to download the 77 questions and also the resource to maximize their equity once they leverage that to get the job at that exciting startup that they're going to bet their career on. And now it's time to talk about how to go from account executive to leadership, because you got promoted from account executive to leader several times, I believe. So
twice. Yeah.
I'd like you to give a little bit of context, like not too much backstory, but just like, was it AE to AE manager? And then it's really 2 questions. I'll guide us through it. Mm-hmm. What do you want to, how do you not get the promotion basically? Like what's the pitfalls to avoid? And then what actually made the difference for you that I assume would be your advice to anyone who wants to make the jump from AE to leader. So let's start with a little context on like, what were the promotions for you? And then we'll get into pitfalls.
Yeah, they both were from AE to AE manager. Simple as that. AE to AE manager. Okay. And in one of the roles, I wasn't a high performer. I was a middle of the pack, salesperson. And the other one, I was the number one salesperson, which has its own risks. What I can tell you from my and this relates to what not to do, by the way.
Yeah.
In both of those situations, Chris, my leadership saw what I was doing and came to me and said, "Hey, you're already doing stuff. How about we have you be a manager?" Okay. The what not to do. So we'll go a little bit in reverse. The what not to do, Chris, is stick your freaking hand out to your boss, sit down in their office or, take their time over a Zoom call and say, "So what do I have to do to become a manager around here?" Without lifting a friggin' finger already on your own. Let me make sure you hear me so crystal clear, Chris, because women in leadership is a big issue. Okay. And a lot of women aren't standing up for themselves and asking for the job. Okay. Men will sit there in the office and go pound their chest about how great they are and how they should be in, leadership. Either way, it bothers the shit out of me. Excuse my language, but come into my office and say, "I've done these things. I've helped these people. I've impacted these people's lives. I'm studying this. I'm doing this. Now, what path do you think we can take to get me into leadership?" But if what not to do is walking in and sticking your hand out and say, "What do I need to do to get into management around here?" Okay. What I did in my career, and again, it was already just, I was doing the job, people helping people. There was other salespeople, other peers of mine that were coming to me and saying, "Hey, KG, can you help me with this? Hey, KG, can you help me with this? Hey, I just got off a call and this particular happened." Or I hear them get off a call and I'll say, "Hey, Billy," or "Hey, Jane, I heard you said this. How did that go? And talk to me about that." And actually put myself out there to help those people. Some salespeople are incredibly competitive and they're like, "I don't want to help my peers." One, help your peers. Okay. That's the first, that's just doing the job. Okay. Number two, continual learning and coachability. Okay. So you want to be in leadership. Tell me about the last leadership book you read over the last 12 months. If you want to be in leadership, learn yourself up, learn yourself up in leadership. And then the final thing may sound obvious to you, Chris, but I've seen it enough times where sales people are starting to not do well in their current job. And they're just like, I'm just kind of burned out. Maybe I should get into management. Okay. Really stay focused on doing the job you were hired to do. Keep your eye on the ball and focus on doing your job. And yes, this is an above and beyond moment. This is continue to do the job that you're hired to do it at your best possible level, and do all the extra stuff. This is where people are like work-life balance and I can't do this and I don't have time for this. And, fine. You're not ready. Okay. That's okay. You're making choices and priorities, that kind of stuff there. But focus on helping your peers, be continually learning and coaching and stay coachable as in becoming a leader. And focus on doing the job that you're in, right now. If you continually do those things, it's hard. It's hard for your leadership to overlook you. Why? Because other people are going to say, "Chris really was helpful on that deal. Chris actually helped coach me on a call recording and we listened to it together. I went to Chris and Chris told me, Chris, hey, shoot, maybe when the next manager role is open, we should put Chris in that role." It becomes obvious when you do those things. What's most irritating is when the sales rep comes into your office and says, "What's it take for me to get into management?" But they haven't done anything on their own. Can you tell me what you're passionate about that, by the way?
Yeah. I mean, what I get from this is leadership chooses you. You don't say, "I'm going to be a leader," and just ask for it. I mean, you can say, "I'm going to be a leader," but you have to put in the work and you have to contribute to those above and beside you and earn it. And then, yeah, maybe it'll call you. But I think that's really important. And some might even say, you don't choose sales chooses you. But thanks for giving us a realistic picture of what it takes to go from AE into a leadership role.
Yeah. And again, to put a finer point on it, Chris, I just want to be clear. I never had to ask for a promotion. Okay. But I am perfectly fine with anybody going into their leaders, their managers, their VP's office and saying, "Hey, what does a promotion path to management look like? What do I have to do to get promoted around here?" Along with doing all the other stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Ask for what you want. Okay. I want people to be bold, but don't just ask for what you want, but not have done anything in advance.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to throw in one other question I often encourage people to ask, whether they're going from SDR to AE, and maybe it applies to a leap into leadership. If you're meeting with the future boss for whatever role and saying like, "What can I do to make myself into the most worthy leader possible or most worthy AE candidate possible?" I throw that out because like, what can I do you're essentially saying, I want to earn this opportunity to take ownership and make myself into the most valuable X or Y possible. And, you're the one with 28 years of experience as a hiring manager, but I just felt compelled to share that too. And I definitely welcome your feedback on it, but I've seen it be very effective for individuals to basically unlock a blueprint from their future boss to their next role.
Yeah. Look, again, I think that's fine. Ask for what you want. If that's where you want to go, ask for what you want. My recommendation is if you want to, anybody can do that. Any Tom, Dick, or Harry can walk into somebody's office and say, what's the blueprint to get promoted? I'm not making fun of you, Chris. What I'm saying is the person that's going to be most impressive to me to make that leap is somebody who's already said, I've done steps A, B, and C. I've already done things. I can already sort of figure out what the blueprint is myself, which is like the kind of leader I want to be shoulder to shoulder with, that isn't just simply coming to me and going, well, we've got a sales growth challenge. Our conversion rates on our deals are lower than, I don't know. What do you think we should do? Like, I want a sales leader working side by side with me that can actually demonstrate that they've thought through possible solutions. The difference is subtle. So I'm agreeing with you and saying, I'm fine with that. You know, what's the blueprint look like? What steps do I have to take? I think that's fantastic. If you really want to set yourself apart, do some things before you ask that question that demonstrates that you've put some freaking thought into it. That's going to set you apart from anybody who could just stick their hand out. What's the blueprint? Tell me. That's
the edit. I've done X, Y, and Z work, whatever that looks like. What more can I be doing actually might be the better, man. So we came together to basically give the audience the blueprint, put in the work, and then, you can ask for what you want, which you validated. So, and there's a thoughtful way to do that. Now, let's bring this thing home with some mindset. You told me in a one-off conversation that positivity is absolutely critical. You're clearly someone who curates what you put into your mind. And you told me that The Secret had a powerful impact on you. So I wanted to ask you about how The Secret impacted you, but if you'd like, you could also, share more broadly the importance of mindset and positivity. You choose where you want to take this.
Yeah. I think that there's a Henry Ford quote out there that's like, whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right. Something like that. I've got that wrong.
We've all heard that one. And that's an important one. We always have to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah. Like whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're right. And I didn't fully know that phrase or embody that phrase until somebody recommended The Secret to me. And it sounded like cheesy at first. It was like, oh, it sounds kind of like philosophical and borderline religious and, whatever. Man, changed my perspective. The more you put positivity out into the world, the more into the universe, the more it gives back to you. The universe responds with that. If you're the type of person who is like always saying out loud or to yourself in your inner monologue, man, I never close deals like this. Man, I'm never going to learn how to blah blah blah. Guess what? You're right. You are right. And so being very active and conscious and intentional about your positivity can reap rewards down the line if you consistently do it. Chris, the standard, if I, say to you, you and I haven't caught up in a while, and I say, hey, Chris, how's it going? That is one of the most, banal openings on the planet. And you're going to say something like, I'm fine. How are you? Because it's just a knee-jerk response. But in order to be intentional about my positivity, if you asked me, let's do it. You ask me, how you doing, KG?
KG, how you doing?
I am happy and grateful for everything that I have in my life. I've got healthy kids, a roof over my head, and money in the bank. I'm grateful for everything we have. And not only is that a pattern interrupt and gets the other person to go, oh, wow, all right, that was not what I expected. But I'm actively and consciously putting gratefulness and positivity out into the universe. And 50% of your audience is going to go, all right, well, this KG's gone off the rails here. The other 50% is going to be like, man, I can, practice gratitude and have a more positive mindset, because there's not one single person in sales that's going to disagree with you or me and say, well, being negative in sales is a key to success. Everyone's going to go, no, you have to have a positive mindset. But what I learned from the book, The Secret, Chris, was actually how to do it. and that practicing gratitude and verbalizing positivity is a key. I don't do the daily affirmations, that's something that some people do. They have flashcards next to their bed or whatever, and they read I think that's great. And I think that's a perfect example of that. Some people think that's just cheesy, and maybe it is. I don't do it. It's something I choose, but I'm very conscious about how I put positivity out in the world, and negative self-talk. I'm never going to be this, or I don't know how to do that. You could shift that. I don't know how to do, I don't know search engine optimization yet, but I'm going to start learning tomorrow. It's a different switch. It's a different switch about my abilities. I can learn it. I will learn it. As opposed to, I'm never going to learn search engine optimization and how to drive organic traffic to my website. See the difference?
Let's turn the positivity switch on.
Yeah.
I was just at lunch with a CEO of a fast growing startup, and he was saying the exact same thing. So success leaves clues. And as I enter into my next meeting after this, they're going to ask how I'm doing. And I'm going to say, I am very grateful. I just had an amazing conversation with KG. I learned a ton. We shared gratitude and positivity. I'm shot out of a cannon. How are you? Okay. So KG, this has been awesome, man. And we already let the audience know we got the 77 questions, the asset to really, you said email training to understand how to maximize your equity at a startup. I want to link your profile as well on LinkedIn, but any other calls to action in terms of how the audience can engage with you and honestly just get more value from everything you put out?
No, I think you nailed it. It's, go find me on LinkedIn. Kevin Gaither, Gaither is my handle on LinkedIn, and my website, InsideSalesExpert.com, InsideSalesExpert.com. You'll find free guides with the 77 questions and several others, as well as under my courses, you'll find that employee stock option course. So LinkedIn and my website, InsideSalesExpert.com. I think that's plenty for your audience.
It's plenty. So much value. What a great conversation. Any other final words of encouragement or inspiration? Anything that comes to mind before we tie a bow on this great conversation?
You know what? Keep learning. Keep learning. Listening to podcasts like this is even if you're number one on your sales team and you made President's Club, every year, we can always get better. So keep learning and stay coachable.
And it ties into one of the characteristics we must demonstrate. We can always break through to higher levels, and cheers to that. KG, thank you. To the audience, thank you for tuning in and being a part of this growing tech sales community. I respect you for investing in your personal and professional development. And to your success in tech sales and in life, happy selling and happy living. And we'll see you in the next one.